Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Star Wars Andor Episode 7, which shows why people in Miami do not go for walks. Are you crazy? Drive! Or just plant your beach chair and wait for the hurricane. I'm gonna break down this episode shot by shot for all the Star Wars Easter eggs and just cool visual details that you might have overlooked. We open back in the home of Cyril Karn, just like the opening shot of Episode 5, except this time there's no ray of sunshine warming Cyril's face. This time you can better see the Imperial action figures on his shelf, evoking the Stormtrooper doll that Jyn Erso has on Lamu in Rogue One. Cyril pours himself more blue bantha milk cereal, while his mother Edie critiques his clothes.
It's a brown suit.
The collar.
What about it?
It's high. You've had it raised.
I had it tailored.
Everything says something, Cyril.
As he did with his pre-Moore uniform, Cyril tailored his suit. And the color brown does say something, because Kyle Soller told us in an interview that for inspiration he looked to the patrols between the wars, referring to the Nazi brown shirts. Cyril sees a televised news broadcast reporting the robbery on Aldhani. News media in the Star Wars universe is not exactly common, but the Empire Day episode of Rebels does reference the Imperial Holonet, a mandatory propaganda broadcast.
Because today is Empire Day, celebrating the 15th anniversary of the galaxy's salvation, when our great Emperor Palpatine ended the Clone Wars and founded our glorious empire.
This news broadcast in Andor could be part of the Imperial Holonet, but this on-screen host doesn't have the propagandistic spin that the announcer in Rebels did. Just like those of us on YouTube who have the balls to show our faces have a bit more credibility. You're welcome. We transition from Cyril to Dedra Meero suiting up, specifically the close-ups of her tugging at her collar. This is a nervous tick that we saw her do in Episode 4, and I like this way of showing how Dedra and Cyril both prefer the choking Imperial leash, as if enjoying the thought of Lord Vader giving them the Mahdi treatment. And that whole choking motif comes up in this ISB speech.
Be here this morning and know that the only question we need to answer is how tight to close our fist.
This is Wullf Yularen, the longtime Star Wars figure who first appeared in the background of A New Hope, but the character was given more of a backstory in Clone Wars as an officer in the Republic Navy serving alongside Obi-Wan and Anakin on various missions. But when the Empire took over, Yularen resigned his commission to become a colonel in the ISB, which is what his rank is now. Yularen is also an ally to Grand Admiral Thrawn, explored in Timothy Zahn's Thrawn novels. Yularen will die along with many of these characters on the Death Star, but Thrawn is still alive years after this during the New Republic era in The Mandalorian. The actor playing him probably going to be revealed at some point in the next 6 months. So through Yularen here, we may yet meet a live-action Thrawn. Yularen announces new empire-wide measures, attacks on sectors that harbor partisan activity, revoking local customs and traditions used as cover by rebels, and new powers granted from the Emperor.
The Emperor will be convening an emergency session of the Senate to propose a legislation package of bills and amendments that will free our hands in all matters of surveillance, search, and seizure.
This Public Order Resentencing Directive, or PORD, parallels the passage of the Real-World Patriot Act after 9/11, which critics felt paved the way for the rise of the surveillance state and encroachment on privacy and civil liberties. Dedra realizes this overreaction was the rebels' true intention.
This is exactly what they want. We're treating what happened at Aldhani like a robbery. What would you call it? An announcement.
Announcement is the title of this episode. The Empire makes its announcements, like Yularen's PORD and the news broadcasts, but the rebels forcing them to escalate dramatically into this putative police state, breaking that illusion of normalization that until then was their true power. Heightening all of this into a more out in the open extreme conflict was really the true announcement of the rebels. Luthen listens to a radio frequency with a robotic voice to mask the person who's sending these messages out.
All military personnel at the garrison have been replaced and are being interrogated by ISB and tracking devices in the escape craft, disabled prior to it reaching hyperspace. 134 Aldhani residents have been taken into custody on the suspicion of abetting the terrorists.
This confirms that everyone who worked on that garrison was sacked, and 134 Aldhanis, which includes all of those pilgrims and probably a lot more people who got stuck in those pubs along the way, all of them have been detained for questioning, and you know what that probably means. Clea announces Mon Mothma is here.
Without warning?
Wipe the smile off your face.
Remember, Luthen, when he's in character, is always smiling, but Clea knows the difference between his character smile and his genuine smile, so she's telling him to keep those two separated. And notice how when Luthen faces the window where the driver Cloris can see them, he maintains that phony grin, but when he turns and faces away from the window, his expression drops to his normal cold demeanor. Mon Mothma apparently was kept in the dark on the Aldhani mission, and Genevieve O'Reilly does such a good job conveying the fear over that.
realize what you've done.
Now, every episode we pointed out all the various Easter eggs in the shop. Check out my past breakdowns for all of them, but I like how front and center you can really see Jedi Master Plo Koon's mask there. But now you can also see a white Jedi Temple guard mask on the shelf behind them. Luthen exchanges the two-faced deity art that he gave Mon Mothma back in episode 4 for the Utapawan monk cudgel that he showed her at that time. And he says,
Has anyone ever made a weapon that wasn't used?
this is a monk cudgel, meaning a peaceful religious figure still made this serrated weapon. Similarly, the Jedi lightsaber was meant to be a defensive tool used by peacekeepers, but of course ended up being weaponized. Luthen is basically saying that when you're at war, the point of your scheming is for it to be weaponized and for people to get hurt. Luthen is essentially echoing Nemik's talking points.
The Empire has been choking us so slowly we're starting not to notice. The time has come to force their hand.
People will suffer.
That's the plan.
Despite Mon Mothma's position as a realist, I like how they always maintain the empathy of her character. Like, she is now and will always be the woman who mourns the Bothans who died giving us this information. Cyril takes a new job at the Bureau of Standards, a vast field of cubicles keeping track of data in the Empire like weights and gauges, redundancy, verification, fuel impurity. The whole worker bee drone vibe does look like something out of Terry Gilliam's Brazil, but also with siloed data entry in your cubicle, very similar to Severance on Apple TV+. I love that show. Cyril has to move out of the way of a mouse droid, and one of the other workers around him does look like a blue-skinned chiss with light-up glasses. Clea makes her way across town. The metro station reads in Orbesh, "Please mind the gap," as doors are closing. This station actually was shot in the real-world McLaren Technology Center in Surrey, the ground floor of which was used for Cyril's arrival back home in episode 4. Clea passes a few stormtroopers who mutter some code to each other. Yeah, the second one said LUH3417, which was the name of the friend in THX1138 in George Lucas's first film, THX1138. Clea passes a hologram ad with Orbesh translating to tasty pizzos. Pizzos are the snack food that the woman asked Cassian to go pick up later in the episode. And then that changes to a PSA message from the Empire, "Carry your chain codes," from the ISB. Chain codes is just basically every person's ID, and the Empire is really the one who instituted everyone having to have chain codes on them at all times. Clea notices a chalk marking on the ground, echoing the chalked Jedi sigils marking the path for Jedi fugitives in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Cinta recovers a speed scooter on Aldhani and looks up to find herself in the shadow of an arriving Imperial Star Destroyer. I like how the camera shakes as it passes overhead, giving us a sense of its magnitude. The area where Clea meets Vel has these brickstone walkways and stucco pillars, matching the brutalist architecture built in London during the Margaret Thatcher era, like the National Theatre. Vel is disappointed Luthen didn't show, and she seems annoyed that they aren't doing more to honor Tamerman, Gorn, or Nemik. Clea orders Vel to kill Cassian. Cassian returns to barracks and greets Marva and B2EMO.
Cassian!
Look at you.
B is so excited to see Cassian, and he lets out a little droid purr when Cassian pats his head like a good boy. At her dinner party, Mon Mothma meets with her longtime friend from her homeworld of Chandrila, Tay Kolma, played by Ben Miles, who played Peter Townsend in early seasons of The Crown. Mon's daughter, Lita, asks to be excused. Now, while Perrin seems to be the more likely of Mon's family to turn on her, his open frustration with her seems more surface level. It wouldn't surprise me if that's all it really is with him, and if Lita could be the one to end up betraying Mon, either by becoming an Imperial cadet, or maybe serving as a mentee to the Grand Vizier, or working in the offices of Sly Moore or the Emperor, kind of like the way he used Anakin Skywalker to spy on the Jedi. Now, you guys have seen my videos enough to know that I watch a lot of TV, a lot of movies, and I rewatch everything a bazillion times just in case I miss something. But depending on where you live, there's a lot of stuff that you just can't watch unless you're using a VPN. And if you're using a VPN, you really should be using ExpressVPN. So ExpressVPN makes it so that your digital location doesn't have to match your physical location. It protects your data from hackers and keeps anybody from logging what you're doing online. And most importantly, it unlocks all kinds of content that you might be missing out on simply because of where you happen to be logging in from. Like if you want to watch Spirited Away on Netflix, normally if you were in the US, you're out of luck. But with ExpressVPN, all you've got to do is just switch your location to the UK, you refresh a page, and you're good to go. And if you're in the UK, switch your location, all of a sudden, you can be watching Vikings. ExpressVPN is so easy to use. All you got to do is open the app and connect with just one click. It's a top-rated VPN provider, rated #1 by TechRadar. Find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free by visiting expressvpn.com/new rockstars or by clicking the link in the description below. Amon catches up with her friend.
I want to tell you something that Only 3 people in the galaxy know about
They pass through this wall decor that looks like a spider web, appropriate since Mon is talking about her own rebel web network. And seconds later, Tay asks her if this matter is personal or political. The camera again frames them from behind that web wall. It also makes us wonder, who are the 3 people in the galaxy who know about this? We have to assume Luthen and Clea are 2 of them, so who is that 3rd person? Probably Bail Organa, right? Like they had that whole conversation, that deleted scene at the end of Revenge of the Sith. As Mon and Tay pass the bar, you can see Perrin out of focus behind them watching her talk to him. And she says,
I've learned from Palpatine. If I show you the stone in my hand, you miss the knife at your throat.
I love this. Mon has recognized the political skill Palpatine wielded to get to his high-ranking position. Cassian sneaks into Bix's shop and he does the shave and a haircut knock to signal her.
Hey, and a haircut.
Cassian jogs to stay ahead of a few stormtroopers and then flashes back to this memory on Rick Street.
This is not our fight, Cass. Don't worry, they won't be here long. They're just gonna raise their silly flag and fly away.
The marching sounds are what draw him into this memory, just like the sounds of B calling him Casa in episode 1 to wake him up brought him back to Kenari then. Some interesting visual trickery here though. In this memory, we see adult Diego Luna shown in close-up, but from behind him and all the other shots in these flashbacks, they swap in a younger actor to play young Cassian, Lucas Bond. So that means Cassian sees himself projecting himself in the past from his present age to relive the childhood trauma, the trauma that stays with him as an adult. Pro-Republic protesters throw rocks at the troopers, which in this flashback are not stormtroopers, but clone troopers. That means this would be set in a very short amount of time, right at the end of the Clone Wars when the Empire was still using clone troopers before Tarkin phased all of them out and replaced them with stormtrooper recruits. That also means, unfortunately for Clem and the protesters, that these guys' aim is a hell of a lot better. Marva wants to stay on Ferrix to resist the Imperial occupation, inspired by the rebel successes on Aldhani. She says that she's tired of turning away from Rick's road to avoid thinking about Clem's body being hung up on display, and Cassian abruptly flashes back to that memory, Clem's frozen sleeves and close-up. This is the second time a Star Wars title in a row to show Imperial forces hanging a criminal. After we saw in Obi-Wan Kenobi, young Cassian charges at 4 clone troopers with this pipe, likely what led to his incarceration before being forced to fight on Mimban. Among Marva's hanging plants is this ornament that looks a lot like the hanging pendant over the dashboard of her ship when she extracted Cassian from Kenari in episode 3. We get this beautiful exchange between the mother and son.
I won't have peace. I'll be worried about you all the time.
That's just love. Nothing you can do about that.
And I just have to single this out because it's so rare in genre shows like this to get an honest expression of the actual emotions love manifests as. Yes, it is another way of saying what is grief if not love persevering, but this isn't a synthezoid defining a term for us. It's a mother telling her son that we all have to live with pain if we want to love people. But it's also her non-verbally telling him that whenever he is gone, she will always worry about him and she will always love him, and there's nothing she can do about that. Marva leaves him with,
Stop searching for your sister. It's a fantasy. There were no survivors on Kenari.
So it's not clear yet if his sister's survival might have been a story Clem or Marva told him to keep him hopeful, or maybe something she knew Cassian believed but never had the heart to tell him to stop believing it. But episode 1 did prove that there was some Kenari girl in that Morlana 1 brothel, and I do not buy the Imperial cover story that the planet is toxic forever and ever. In fact, that giant pit that young Cassian walked up to, I believe we have seen in other shots and trailers, a pit now filled with water and used to build some Imperial construction. So I do think that mystery is leading somewhere. Partagaz orders,
let's have a full audit of all hyperspace lanes leading to Ord Mantell on my desk by this time tomorrow.
Yes, Ord Mantell was first mentioned in Empire Strikes Back.
I thought you had decided to stay.
Well, the bounty hunter we ran into in Ord Mantell changed my mind.
This planet has since been visited in Darth Maul, son of Dathomir comics, and in episodes of Bad Batch. At this point in history, it's being used as an Imperial shipyard. Blevin accuses Miro of overreach, and Miro does admit she used the Emergency Act to access Imperial records without sanction, but reframes the argument to say their jurisdictional boundaries should not apply here.
I'd like to know if anyone here believes the rebellion plans its actions around the artificially constructed boundaries of our sectors.
Major Partagaz created those sectors.
As organizing principles, not personal playthings, do you really think the rebels care about the lines we draw on maps?
Yes, she's saying by redrawing the maps, the Empire siloed its oversight from overseeing how rebel activity might transgress those jurisdictions. And Partagaz, to his credit, can't help but agree. He reassigns Morlana 1 and Ferrix from Blevin to Miro, but he does warn her to watch her back. Onto the planet Niamos, which almost sounds like Miami, both in its name and the jammin' music Nicholas Bertel composed for it. but they actually shot this in the UK coastal town of Cleveland, using the same stone terraces leading to the water and the rocky seawalls. Of course, they added in these massive resort hotels, and if you look in the distance, a galactic cruise liner. Cassian, now going by the alias Keith Gergo, has a woman companion, Wendy, who asks,
"Don't forget the pizzos."
Again, that is a snack food in the Holo ad on Coruscant earlier, probably something we'll be able to buy at Galaxy's Edge soon enough. Cassian passes this dude with a droid leg playing a handheld version of Dejarik, that's a board game Chewie and R2 are playing on the Falcon. Imperial probe droids fly overhead, and he gets stopped by this Stormtrooper, wearing the same tan Shore Trooper armor as the Scarab Troopers in Rogue One.
You a part of it?
Part of what?
Don't play dumb.
If this voice sounds familiar, it's an uncredited cameo by Sam Whitwer, voice of Maul in the Star Wars animated series. Whitwer even tweeted this line confirming it. This trooper calls over a KX unit who initially walks up the beach all sexy like Ursula Andress and Dr. No. So hot, this droid. But the trooper says,
"Hang on to this one for me. I want to check the shelter."
He said hang.
He meant what?
Hang.
No, he means what?
Uh-oh, we get this Imperial choking motif again. And to be clear, this KX unit is not K2SO or will not be K2SO. This one is voiced by Aiden Cook, who also did Dr. Quadpaw last episode. The introduction between Cassian and K2SO is already codified in Star Wars canon. It's explored in the Rogue One Cassian and K2SO comic, where Cassian wipes his memory and reprograms him on the planet Wekako. And then we cut to this courtroom, cooled by this blade fan with an Imperial crest. The judge eats what looks like pistachios and uses this old school manual credit card swiper to print out their Imperial rap sheets. The guy right before Cassian gets charged with walking an unleashed Massive. Massives are the Tusken dogs from Tatooine. This rap sheet actually reads, name Richard Stevenson, crime, failure to follow Imperial command, anti-Imperial vandalism, sentence 5 years. Yeah, the judge called out 4 months for this guy in different crimes. They just clearly shot close-ups of different rap sheets than what the dialogue says. Cassian's charge used to be a 6-month sentence, but thanks to the new Imperial edicts, as a result of his rebel success, it goes up to 6 years. And his Orbesh rap sheet stuck in another inside joke. Name Keith Seymour, crime suspected for sensitivity, assaulting an Imperial officer, sentence 25 years. Keith Seymour is a very talented Star Wars concept artist. The episode ends back with Cyril Karn in the Bureau of Standards, his brown suit swapped out for a gray suit that matches everyone else's. He is unable to stand out, wearing a kind of prison uniform. His eyes scan lines and lines of numbers, again very much like Severance, but he looks up and to the left, as he did in the very first shot. There he was looking out the window looking for sunlight, now he looks up at us, at the camera, as if at a security camera monitoring him. He is in a prison of another kind. Cyril and Cassian, both incarcerated, victims of their own ambitions. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at EA Voss. Follow New Rockstars. Subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Bye.